Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome back to Political Alchemy. I'm Jake, the Muslim metaphysician. And on today's stream, we have a somewhat interesting episode for you guys. I'll be discussing Andrew Tate. I won't be going into some of the other things that I will be mentioning on my regular channel, Jake Brancatello, my regular channel. But on this channel, I'm going to be focusing on, in this particular video, Andrew Tate's comments about the UK riots and his debate with Piers Morgan. Many people have probably already seen the debate with Piers Morgan, but some people haven't because he's being boycotted by Muslims, and rightly so. So some people don't watch it and they tune into debate reviews like this to catch some of the highlights instead of giving Piers Morgan more views. With that being said, guys, it was a long discussion or debate, if you can call it that. It was almost an hour long. So what I'm going to do is I've got some timestamps of what I felt were important sections from the debate. Obviously, I can't go through everything. So I'm going to play some clips and break it down. But before I do that, I want to show a post that took place after the debate with Piers Morgan. And this is from Andrew Tate. This is from today, actually, August 11th, earlier today, about wait, how long ago was that? About 8 hours ago, something like that. Where he says, as a Muslim, I believe the British state should treat Christians and Muslims equally. I do not like to see the British state treating Muslims better than Christians. We are human. And a multicultural democracy can only function when we are all treated fairly under the law. So basically, he's implying or buying into this far-right nonsense that the Muslims in the UK are treated better under the law than Christians and than white people and all of this nonsense. He's spewing far-right rhetoric in the UK. And he always prefaces the nonsense that comes out of his mouth as a Muslim. And Piers Morgan, remember that I'm a Muslim, so therefore I can say all of this anti-Islamic, anti-Muslim things that come after I preface the fact that I'm a Muslim. No, you can't do that. And there's even doubt that you're Muslim in the first place due to you spewing kufr and shirk and worshiping Jesus in 4K and posting it all over your social media platforms and leaving it up there until today. So, you know, we're not really being fooled by this nonsense, Andrew, but that's a whole nother story. But I wanted to show that even after that, even after his discussion with Piers Morgan, even after the public criticism, he's still spewing the same nonsense and supporting the talking points and rhetoric of the far right in the UK. Okay. So now let me go to the actual discussion here. Let me share my screen and let's go to the discussion with Piers Morgan. But actually, before I play the clips, I want to say from the outset, and I'm no fan, and people know this, I've reviewed many clips of Piers Morgan. I think he's dishonest. I think he's merely after views and money, and he's a straight up clown. Nevertheless, Piers Morgan worked Andrew Tate over. I mean, he beat him over the head. He caught him in contradictions. It was very clear that Andrew Tate was dishonest and disingenuous in his responses and his take throughout the whole discussion. I mean, it was just a complete debacle from a Muslim point of view. So anyway, let's take a look at this.
What you've been doing in the last week. You wanted people to believe this was one of the people who come over on a boat illegally into this country, part of the so-called invasion. And here's the interesting thing about your position with regard to your conversion to Islam and becoming a Muslim. Muslims, as you know, have been ranting about you for the last few days and utterly betraying them because you've decided to associate yourself with Tommy Robinson, who is a far-right thug, who has been spewing utter horrible Islamophobic anti-Muslim rhetoric all week, and yet you have not distanced yourself from him. So the Muslim community in the UK now view you as part of the enemy too. You know that. How do you feel about that?
Well, I pray for my brothers, and I think the information I've seen and the replies I've seen have not been hateful from the Islamic community. Saying to Tommy Robinson that I will debate him on issues, I don't think is failing to distance myself. I debate you all the time, Piers, and we disagree on basically everything. I'm happy to argue with Tommy because we disagree on so many different points of view, and I think it's very important that we have conversation. The reason these riots are happening in the first place is because everybody's afraid to talk. I'm prepared to sit down with somebody I don't like and don't agree with.
That's complete nonsense.
I'm prepared to talk to Tommy.
That's nonsense. The reason the riots are happening is people like you and Tommy Robinson have been spewing utter disinformation, which has led people to believe that the person that perpetrated these despicable crimes was an illegal Muslim migrant who was on the MI6 terror watch list. Firstly, right. I'm saying you and Tommy Robinson,
let's be careful.
between you, okay. I'm saying between you,
but
you
where's the logic
there
failure?
A completely false impression.
There's a logic failure of lumping me in with somebody who I don't agree with and saying, "Oh, you and him."
So, do you denounce Tommy Robinson?
Tommy Robinson and I disagree on a whole bunch of issues, and I think he's completely incorrect on his view of Islam. We're not playing this game of constant denouncing.
Do you denounce him for inciting the rioting?
I denounce him for everything bad he said about Islam. He's absolutely incorrect, and I cannot be his friend or support him for that reason.
For inciting the rioting by telling people it was a Muslim illegal migrant.
It's not for me. It's not for me to decide who has incited the rioting, and it's not for you to decide.
Wow, you can't denounce that.
A court denounce what? I'm not going to sit here and say who's in charge of the riots because
telling people he was an illegal Muslim.
My view on why the riots happened is because I believe that the native population, the Christian population of the UK, feels like their voice is not heard. I think if their voice was...
Notice this. He cannot denounce Tommy Robinson. Piers Morgan, if gives him an opportunity after opportunity, do you denounce Tommy Robinson, right? Do you denounce him for what he's doing in inciting the violence against Muslims, against mosques being attempted to be vandalized, and all of these different riots that took place against Muslims because of this clown, Tommy, spewing his rhetoric, claiming that this person who killed these poor, innocent 3 girls, right, was a Muslim migrant when he wasn't at all. First of all, he wasn't even a migrant, and he wasn't Muslim. So on both counts, and what's his name? Andrew won't denounce Tommy for that because that's his little buddy. And as we see, he's still playing up to the far right talking points. So time and time again. So this is a big L for Andrew here, on being unable to denounce Tommy for this nonsense and anti-Muslim rhetoric that he's spewing.
Was heard and they had correct.
No, that's not why the riots happened.
Things would not be happening.
That's not why the riots happened. The riots happened. The riots happened because people like
things are written on social media all day, every day.
No, Andrew.
And there's no riots.
No, Andrew.
People finally had enough after endless attacks where they felt like they did not get a voice.
Let me respond.
See, and he's making up lies about why the riots happen. They just happen because people are upset that they're not being heard. No, they are being heard. The reason why the riots happened is because voices like you and Tommy were heard. And what happened? People followed their false narratives and therefore attacked Muslims and blamed Muslims for something that had nothing to do with Islam or Muslims. That's exactly why they were happening, right? That's not the only reason, but that's one of the main reasons. And Andrew will not acknowledge that. And he will not denounce Tommy because that's his old buddy back from his Luton days, right? It's a complete joke. But anyway, let's fast forward a little bit here because he keeps dancing around the Tommy thing. Just checking out some of my timestamps here. Okay, let's take a listen to this.
Of these children, and I have a massive problem with that. Yeah. And you have boxed yourself, if you don't mind me saying. So hang on.
So do I.
Hang on. You have boxed yourself into a position now where your own Muslim community in the UK are enraged with you because they believe you are siding with Tommy Robinson, who is leading a far-right series of attacks on Muslims and mosques and is being blatantly Islamophobic in the process. And you know that. And so what do you say to the Muslim community who believe that's what you're doing?
Well, if there's a small contingent of the Muslim community which believe that, I've yet to see so much vitriol like you're pretending exists. But I want to make it very clear. I want to make it very clear, Piers. I'll make it very clear here. I will answer the question. I am an Islamic revert, and I do not want to talk scripture because there's people more qualified than I, but I'll make it clear. I lead with love in my heart. The Islam I was taught was one of peace and tolerance. There's not a single person alive who can force me to take sides or to hate anybody else. And I don't care what kind of Islamic person you are, to come along and tell me I should hate somebody else because of Islam is not the kind of Islam I prescribe to. I have half of my family which is Christian, half of my family which is Muslim. I'm half black, I'm half white. I do not want either sides of my family to face any kind of violence on the streets. I'm the person who's been calling for peace. You're reading out the odd tweet here and there. Why don't you read out the 30 tweets I tweeted explaining that we need peace on the streets and we need to restore some form of democratic representation to the House of Parliament? You only choose and lie by omission and try and pretend there's a problem where there's not. I love all of my Islamic brothers, and I also love every Christian, Buddhist, and Hindu. I'm a person who has no hate in his heart. And if anybody has a problem with me personally, I'm happy to speak to them about it. But all in all, I've not seen
what about
this
Jewish
hate that you're
people?
Pretending exists. I've actually seen unlimited support.
People?
I've actually seen huge support from the Islamic community. That's what I've seen, because they understand that in Islam we teach each other to live and love
let me
with
read
peace.
you.
We're not sitting here to try to hurt each other. And actually, one more thing.
I mean, he goes on here. It's all utter nonsense. But the point is, you know, Andrew is spewing this fairy tale narrative of what he thinks Islam is. That, oh yeah, we just sit here and we love, and we're just so loving, and we love everybody, even though they want to hate, kill us if they want to kill us. They hate us, but we don't hate them. I mean, what is he? Where's he getting this from? And oh, I don't have any hate in my heart. I'm sorry, sir, but then you don't know anything about Islam, because you know what the Quran and Sunnah's position are when it comes to dealing with disbelievers and those who try to not even only just disbelievers, but those who are actively pursuing to destroy Muslims. Somebody like Tommy Robinson. Do you know what the Quran and Sunnah's position is? We're supposed to just love them and we love all of these other people. No, this is not this is not the Quran and Sunnah's position. We don't love these people, right? We hate them with our heart, and if we can, we speak about it and even restrain them with our actions if we're able to, right? It's not this. We're not this pacifist, hippie Jesus, love everybody equally religion. No, that's not our religion, Andrew. You don't understand the basics of al-wala wal-bara. You have no idea about it. And that's why you're constantly siding with the kuffar, siding with the disbelievers, just as Ham tanks, and I didn't say that right, he does it purposely, I believe, this kumbaya nonsense that you're spewing. No, we don't have this position. And he keeps going on, and Piers Morgan is calling him out for his lie, claiming that, oh no, I haven't seen many Muslims be critical of my stance lately. And those who have, maybe it's a very small contingent. But here's what I have to say to them. Nobody is going to make me hate these people. Well, if the Quran and Sunnah don't, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam don't, then we don't know what to tell you, because you have no concept of al-wala wal-bara. You have no concept of it whatsoever, Andrew. And this is because you are not sincere in your faith. You are not sincere in claiming that you love Muslims and that you're all peace-loving. No, you're just a plant. You're someone who claims that you want to get people to escape the matrix, but you are the matrix yourself. You're part of the matrix, right? And people shouldn't be confused that Andrew is not part of the matrix. He certainly is. But let me skip forward here now and go to the next clip that I want to take a look at. I mean, there's so many things here, but I mean, let's take a listen.
The riots. You retweeted it, so presumably you agree with him.
Well, Tommy and you do work for the same people, so that is interesting that you want to try and bring this point up. However, let me make this clear.
You literally retweeted
when you have people on the same street,
who is a disgusting white supremacist who spews anti-Semitic crap morning, noon, and night. You retweeted him. Do you agree with him when he said it's clear these protests are being amplified and directed by Zionist plants on social media? Do you agree with that?
Well, the point I agree with, if you will let me finish my answer. When you have white people and brown people on the same street,
do you agree with Zionist plants?
I'm trying to finish. I'm trying to answer the question. When you have black people, brown people, white people on the same street who are all upset with the government because the government has betrayed them, and I think everybody agrees that, and they're fighting against each other, this will only result in more government crackdowns and more power against everybody. Brown people and white people, Muslims and Christians, everybody will suffer from more totalitarianism from the government. Keir Starmer stood up and said, I'm going to be totalitarian and I'm going to use this as an excuse to take away more of your rights and more of your liberties and take away your ability to ever answer any question and have a true point of view, or to ever assemble and make it clear that you're unhappy about certain things.
My question?
What Nick was right about was the result of all of this senseless violence, which is going to be a government crackdown and everyone's going to lose their rights. He was right about that. And that's why it's so important that all my Muslim brothers understand that violence is not the answer. And all of the Christians also who are upset and worried understand violence is not the answer. And that we have more in common with each other than we do these elites who are selling us out. And those are the people who are deciding that these boats can arrive on the border.
I'm just going to try one more time.
The average Muslim man on the street doesn't want boats arriving of undocumented migrants either. You can't turn up in the United Arab Emirates without a passport. You can't go to Qatar without a passport. You can't go to Bahrain without a passport. Only in the UK.
Nobody wants it.
I mean, he's just again spewing the same nonsense. I mean, it's so beyond me how anyone would still think that this guy is genuine, that he really is sincere in his conversion to Islam, that he really loves and cares for Muslim community in the UK. I mean, it's just shocking how he's unwilling in this instance to denounce the Zionists and Zionists like Tommy Robinson, right? And admit that he took a major role in inciting the violence being perpetrated against Muslims in these riots and things that happened after the fake news that was spread by people like Tommy and Andrew. He won't denounce the Zionists in this instance, but he will blame Muslims. And he will blame Muslims for not understanding. And he will blame everybody else and throw everybody else under the bus except the Zionists. It's very strange. Anyway, let's go to the next clip because he just wastes a lot of time rambling about the same point here.
Fine. I completely agree there should be no two-tier policing. Everyone should be exposed to the force of the law in exactly the same equitable manner. But just to be clear, do you personally, Andrew Tate, believe if you're born in the United Kingdom, you're British or not?
Okay, so this is actually amazing because you know the guy who killed those poor 3 little girls, and it was spread that he was actually a Muslim migrant. Now, Andrew never explicitly said he was Muslim, but people like Tommy and his other buddies did. And Andrew was blaming it, saying clearly that he was a migrant, which he also wasn't a migrant. So now Piers is questioning him, do you take back what you said and your claim that he was a migrant? And prior to this section, Andrew doubles and triples down on it and says, no, I'm not. Basically, I'm not going to take it back. He waffles around, and he explains why some people would consider this person to be a migrant, essentially because he's not a white European. So even the fact that he was born in the UK, he's still technically considered a migrant. And Piers rightly calls this out as complete nonsense and starts questioning Andrew. Well, I don't care what these other people think or say. What is your actual position? Do you believe if someone is born in the UK that they are a Brit or not? Do you believe that they're a migrant even if they're born in the UK just because they're not white European? And we see that Andrew waffles around and almost refuses to answer the question, and eventually he answers it, and we'll see how he winds up contradicting himself later on. But let's listen.
Personally, I don't think my personal views have anything to do with it, and I think they'll just distract from the point I made. The point I made
literally
is that
put your personal views out morning, noon, and night. So Why are you dodging the question?
Yeah, he says, my personal views don't matter. Oh, really? Then why the hell are you on Piers Morgan? Why is your ego so big all the time that you think that you're top G and that your views do matter and you want to spread them all over? And you are talking on social media morning, evening, and in the night, afternoon, and nighttime. And yet you want to make the claim now, oh, no, my views don't matter. So what the hell are you doing on Piers Morgan? You are dodging the question, and Piers Morgan caught you red-handed. You look like a fool, man. Nobody should be fooled by this. Even non-Muslims are watching this saying, this guy's a joke. Are you kidding me?
Because I don't think my personal views are that interesting. I think I could say my personal
Wow.
views, yes. I believe if you're born in the UK, that
literally-
you're from the UK. However,
You do? Okay.
I would say my personal
Wow.
views, yes. I believe if you're born in the UK, that
literally-
you're from the UK. However,
His personal view, watch this. Check this out. This is at minute 36 mark. He says, my personal view after waffling around is if you're born in the UK, you are a Brit, you're part of the UK, you're not a migrant. Pay attention to that, but watch later on how he backtracks.
however,
You do? Okay.
However,
Fine. No,
however,
no,
sir.
no, no. There's
However,
no whoever. You've answered the question. You believe they are British. So after that long speech, you agree with me. If you're born in the United Kingdom, you're British. Now, the other thing I want to get clarity on is this. This tweet from your friend Nick, as you call him, who's actually
it
a white
doesn't matter what
supremacist,
I
Nick
think,
Fuentes.
Piers. It matters what the people who are rioting are
Fine,
thinking.
you've made that
And
point.
This is why
I wanted to know what you think.
Question,
Fine.
because you're trying.
I just
you're
asked you
trying
what
to get
you
a gotcha
thought.
moment. And you're trying to deflect.
I saw a gotcha moment. I'm asking you to be
that's
honest.
what I think. You're right.
Okay.
That's what I
good.
think. But the people who are rioting
let
think
me-
otherwise.
so
and
let-
I'm trying
fine,
to
let me
explain to
ask
you
you
how
then.
they think. So
Fine,
we can
you've
give them a
answered the question.
representation to prevent the riots
answered the
happening again.
question.
I can understand
answered
other
the
points of
question.
view where it seems you
Fine.
cannot.
You've answered the question.
Sure.
You've answered the question. Let me now answer this one simply. When you retweeted the white supremacist Nick Fuentes, who you call Nick, on the subject of the riots, and he said it's
Well, that's
clear
his name.
that not only are these protests being amplified and directed by Zionist plants on social media, do you agree with what he said? Is that why you retweeted it?
I agree. I agree with the latter point about how everybody's going to lose their freedoms.
What about the first point I just read out? Do you agree with that?
Well, I don't have to agree with every single point of a tweet. I can agree with the end result of a
retweeted it.
tweet. I don't know who's
So you
directing.
don't agree with
I
him
don't know
then?
who's
So
directing.
you, just to be clear,
well, I
so
don't know
you
who's.
don't
I don't know
think
who's
that
directing
Zionist
these
plants
riots.
on social
I just
media
know the end result.
amplified the riots.
So he doesn't know that Tommy's directing the riots when he already admitted that Tommy's a Zionist. If he admitted that Tommy was part in directing these riots, and he knows he's a Zionist and admitted it, then he would say, yeah, I believe that Zionists are part of doing that. But he won't say it because that's his boy from Luton. And this is why Andrew does not understand al-wala wal-bara. He thinks that he needs to have allegiance with Tommy instead of Islam and Muslims.
Riots.
I don't know who's directing these riots. I know the end result. I know why the riots happened in my own personal view because of underrepresentation. I think Keir Starmer's
But
failed.
do
I
you
the
think
police
it
have
was
failed. I think
Zionist
our political
plans?
classes sold us out. And I think that the end result is going to be bad times for everyone in the UK. My
Fine.
Muslim brothers are
It's
going to
already
suffer.
bad
Brown
times
people will
for people
suffer.
in the
Christian will
UK.
suffer. Black will suffer. It's bad times
Fine,
for
it's
everybody.
fine.
I'm not going to say who's
I don't need
directing
a
what because
speech.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
I
I'm
don't
just
need a
telling you
speech.
exactly why I retweeted that tweet.
Right, so a white supremacist anti-Semite, Nick Fuentes, blames Zionist plants for amplifying and directing these riots, and you retweet him.
Do you
So
know,
you now wish
do you
to
know who he's talking about when he says that?
Do you?
Yes.
Who?
He's talking about Tommy Robinson, who's openly Zionist. Do you believe Tommy Robinson incited these things? Because if you do, you agree with Nick Fuentes. You have just been sitting here saying Zionists have been pushing
Sorry,
these
just to
riots
be
from the beginning
clear,
of this whole
so just to be-
interview,
okay.
sir. So you
That's very interesting.
you just fell into the
Very
exact same
interesting.
trap. You agree exactly with what Nick
Very
just said.
interesting.
So now you're
Okay,
going to
very
sit here
interesting.
and say, "Oh, he's a white
Very
supremacist," to
interesting.
try and get gotcha moments when you
So just to
fail
be
with
clear,
your own point of view.
Just to
Tommy
be clear,
is a Zionist, sir. Tommy is a
just
Zionist.
to be clear then. So just to be clear, when you retweeted this, you believed Nick Fuentes was talking about Tommy Robinson.
I believe he was talking about Tommy Robinson, but I only agree with the latter part of the tweet, as I said.
So that proves that Andrew doesn't believe that Tommy was taking part in inciting the riots and had no role to play, because he believes that that part of the tweet was referring to Tommy Robinson, and he says that he doesn't agree with that part of the tweet. He only agrees with the second half. So again, Andrew doesn't want to blame Zionists like Tommy Robinson, but he wants to blame everyone else.
Right.
But you agree with the first part of the tweet.
So to be
I
clear,
don't know why
then,
you're sitting here trying to use it as a gotcha when you agree with the tweet yourself.
To be clear, then you don't agree when he said the protests are being amplified and directed by Zionist plants on social media. You don't agree with that.
No, I think that people had a legitimate concern.
Thank you. That's all we need.
I think the UK is a powder keg.
I don't need another speech, Andrew. You've answered the question.
You agree with Zionists.
It's fine.
You believe that Zionists have
no need for a speech.
You do.
No need for a speech.
You are an anti-Semite.
Let me read to you comments from the influential Muslim commentator who's been on Uncensored, Muhammad Hijab, who said to you this: "My brother, I've always supported you, but you're severely off the mark on the following points. Your acquiescence to far-right figures like Tommy Robinson is haram, as he is an enemy of Islam. Your lack of condemnation of far-right thugs who attacked a mosque and who attack Muslims and Islam more generally. Many far-right hooligans want no peace with us. They consider us to be an impossible subject. Our existence frustrates them. You are one of us. They will never accept you fully until you embrace their beliefs. We worship Allah alone and build our purpose on this. No one can compete with this. I urge you to endorse this message and salvage the situation." Do you endorse his message? Do you now denounce right-wing thugs who committed attacks on Muslims and on mosques in the last week? And do you therefore condemn Tommy Robinson for inciting it?
Oh, okay. So firstly, I absolutely condemn all violence, especially against Muslims and against mosques. I know Muhammad Hijab well, and I respect him, and he is extremely versed on the Quran and Islam. He's more versed than I am. I think that by having open conversation with the people I disagree with, I did not see myself as aligning with them, but perhaps this is a perception I need to address, of course. I think anybody who's been violent on either side is doing the wrong thing and is being disgusting. I want to make something clear. Piers, you do this very common trick of me explaining to you why I believe something is happening and then you saying that that's my point of view. I'm not saying I agree with right-wing people who are rioting and attacking Muslims. I'm telling you why I believe they did it. I believe they did it because they didn't feel like they had political representation. That does not mean I represent them. That does not mean I advocate for them. That does not mean I agree with them. That's not why they did it. I just sat here. I just sat here while you told me Nigel Farage sold me out, and I said that's fine. Yeah. I still agree with some things he says. I'm a very logical person. Fine. I'm not emotional about these things.
Well, if you're logical, you'll understand. But Andrew, if you're logical, you will understand that is not why they did what they did. It's not why they rioted. They rioted in direct response to a social media-led campaign of disinformation, which told them that the person who killed these little girls was an illegal immigrant Muslim who was on an MI6 terror watch list. This is very important. None of those things were true.
Piers, this is very important, sir. And I consider you in many ways a friend. This is very important. You advocated, please let me finish this. It's 30 seconds. You advocated for the vaccine and you got people killed. You are now going to be advocating for people to lose their freedom of speech online. And there's not going to be anyone's going to be allowed discourse anymore because you're sitting here pretending.
He starts waffling on and on. I mean, he can't condemn Tommy Robinson. He can't condemn the right-wing people because why? I mean, obviously those are his buddies. See what he's doing now, talking about this two-tier policing system and Muslims are getting more favored under the law. Are you kidding me? It's just unbelievable, man. He just cannot. He had a chance. And he's also dishonest. He knows many Muslims condemned him. He's aware of this tweet from Hijab and many others. And he's aware of this. People who have typically been soft on Andrew even came out and were critical of him and is acting like, oh, no, it's just a very small Muslim contingent that is upset with some of the things I've recently been saying and doing. I mean, it's just a joke. He's just dishonest, guys. There's no way around it. Let's skip forward a little bit here.
5% accurate, which is more accurate than the BBC's ever been about anything, or you for extension, most of the time. You've been wrong a whole bunch. Do you condemn Israel? Do you remember that? October 7th, do you condemn?
I do.
Condemn Israel and their genocide? Oh, it's about time. So I was right back then, and it took you 6 months to catch up, and you're going to see in 6 months.
No, you weren't right back then.
Right. If we don't,
you said,
I'm right. If we don't cure the disease, which is people feeling underrepresented by the political class, the symptoms, which is violence, are going to continue to prop up all around the country.
Fine, but forever. What you don't seem to want to accept,
sir.
Fine. What you don't seem
And what
to
you
want
don't
to
want to accept is that what you are saying
No,
is that the
let me
politicians
put the
are
question
perfect
to you.
and they've done nothing wrong,
No,
and the people
I don't think they're
people have no
perfect.
good point of view, and
That's
that we should
complete
shut everyone up
nonsense.
online and not let anyone talk.
Complete
You are
nonsense.
advocating
Nobody
for
is shut up
slavery for the
online.
population. That's what you're advocating for.
Let me speak. Nobody is shut up online. Elon Musk has made it much easier for everyone to be online and have their say. You do it all day long. You spew a lot of untruths. And I'm simply asking you, when you're wrong and what you say helps influence minds to go and commit riots, as it did, because you and Tommy Robinson, between you and others who were amplifying and spreading this bullshit about who this person was, ended up with rioting against Muslims who had nothing to do with the killing of those girls.
Pierce,
And you,
Pierce,
as a Muslim of all people, should have been the first to denounce
Of course,
it.
Pierce. No, Pierce. The logic failed. You're a smart man. But are you trying to say that if you say anything online, you are now responsible for all the consequences of that action? So if Cardi B sings about how she can drug men and lie that they raped her, if a girl then lies about being raped and ruins that man's life, Cardi B is responsible? Is that what you're saying? That is
asking you this.
Such a logic fail. It doesn't even make sense.
No, I'm not saying that.
There's a lot of people who say a lot of things online. There's a lot of people who advocate for insane things online all of the time.
Fine, stop shouting.
I'm not telling you to not be able to talk.
I believe you've accepted in this interview that you spread disinformation about the person who perpetrated these crimes being an illegal immigrant to the UK. Would you like to apologize for spreading that wrong information?
So remember when I said he's going to contradict himself? Remember before when he said, I believe that somebody who is born in the UK is British and is a Brit and is not a migrant? Remember when he said that before? That's his personal view. Now watch what he says. When he's told that you admitted before that you were spreading disinformation based on calling him a migrant when he wasn't, and he admits that earlier when he said anyone who's born in the UK is not a migrant, right? And then now he's going to backtrack.
The whole video was expressing my distaste, dissatisfaction, and disgust at the events that took place. I believe that I was 95% accurate and got a detail wrong. I didn't get anything important wrong. A 17-year-old man stabbed little girls in a Taylor Swift concert. And
people attacked asylum seeker hotels
that shouldn't
because
ever
they
happen,
believed
sir.
it was an
That
illegal
should
migrant.
never happen. That should never happen anywhere. So for you to sit and say, oh, well, us as the legacy media who never get anything wrong ever expect 100% accuracy when all you do is lie. I made it very clear that it is unacceptable that little girls die on the streets and that people need to make it clear that we are not going to accept
spread
this
lies
anymore.
about who did it.
You've spread plenty of lies, sir,
and
yourself.
the lies
I don't
have caused the riots.
So when Andrew's getting questioned about the lies that he spread, that this was an illegal migrant who did this killing, which it wasn't. He wasn't a migrant, and he wasn't an illegal migrant, right? When he is being called out by Piers for this, his response is, oh, but you're part of the legacy media, and Fox News and the BBC, they spread lies too, and you have before Piers as well, which is true, but it's totally irrelevant. He's just trying to get away from the issue of simply admitting that he was wrong and apologizing, but he won't do it because he has too much pride.
To sit and say that my video is the only reason there was riots is disingenuous.
I didn't say that.
Dangerous.
I said you
are going to be the
Robinson
person. You're going to be the
others
person
spreading
who takes
complete
away
bullshit.
everybody's ability to express. You're going to take away everybody's ability to express their opinion. And let me tell you something. People who don't feel politically represented at least feel like they have freedom of speech online. If you take that away as well, things are going to get a lot worse. It's going to be worse for the country. Piers, you have to be careful sitting here on your show telling people that unless they said what you want them to say, they're not allowed to be on the internet. You are talking Stalinist.
When did I say that?
It's communist. It's dangerous.
When did I say that?
That's exactly what you said.
When did I say that?
You said that anyone who says anything online is causing the riots themselves directly, and they're directly responsible. And there's no powder keg in the UK due to a failure of the policing and the judiciary and the politicians. And you're sitting here, and I'm telling you, Piers, the things you're advocating for are going to cause more death and destruction than that vaccine you pushed or that country you support as they bomb little children. Piers, be very careful what you say.
Yeah, listen, I'll take your lectures morning, noon, and night. It makes no difference to me whatsoever. But would you like to take this opportunity finally to tell the rioters to stop rioting? Yes or no?
Absolutely. Well, considering I've been saying that for the last 4 days on Twitter and you didn't read any of the tweets out, they should be in front of you. There's at least 30. Let me make it clear to the people on both sides of the equation, all of my brothers in Islam and all of the Christians and native people of the UK who feel like they're underrepresented. You have more in common with the people you live amongst than you do with these political elites. The people you live amongst love their children and they're struggling to pay the bills exactly like you are. There's no reason for UK, one of the greatest countries in the world, one of the largest empires in history, to be plunged into poverty if it wasn't being looted by a political class that do not care about you. And the people who do not care about you, the number one thing they want is the different breeds or different types or different categories of poor people to fight so nobody looks up and sees who the real enemy is. Britain can be a rich country and it can be prosperous and it can be safe and it can be regulated and the police can respond and it can be as beautiful as a lot as the first world Islamic nations are. There's no reason why it has to be the way it is unless a political class was failing the people who they're supposed to represent for generations. And that's where this anger and hatred comes from. Not because a video was made on Twitter. That is so infantile and asinine to believe that some little video on Twitter started all of these things.
Here's what
That is what's happening. So stop rioting amongst each other and realize who the real enemy of your freedom is. When you understand the truth about this world, listen, I was born on a Luton council estate and now I have hundreds of millions of dollars. And let me promise you, it's never poor versus poor. It's rich versus poor. When a black billionaire and a white billionaire meet, there is no racism because they are billionaires. Racism is what they use to divide the poor people to stop us realizing that they lie about every single thing on the news, that they inflate the currency, listen to each other and realize who the real enemy of your freedom is. When you understand the truth about this world, listen, I was born on a Luton council estate and now I have hundreds of millions.
Notice he says he was born on a Luton council estate. No, he wasn't. Where were you born, Andy? Where were you born, Andy? Andy boy, you were not born in the UK. You were born in the US. You migrated to the US. What does that mean? That makes you a migrant. So these same migrants you're talking about, and you keep playing to the far right rhetoric that not only anyone who's not born in the UK, but people who are born in the UK but are not of European descent, they all are migrants. Now, you said you didn't believe that, but then you backtracked and said that you're not going to take it back because you were only wrong about the fact that he was an illegal migrant, but he still was a migrant because he's not from, native British, so-called native British descent or European descent. But do you understand the irony, sir? You weren't born in Luton. Where were you born? You were born in the US. So technically, you are a migrant, you moron. You absolute buffoon. You absolute fool. And you are trying to pull one over on the Muslim community. And now we have to say, no, sir, you are not going to continue to pull one over on us. You are not.
Millions of dollars. And let me promise you, it's never poor versus poor. It's rich versus poor. When a black billionaire and a white billionaire meet, there is no racism because they are billionaires. Racism is what they use to divide the poor people to stop us realizing that they lie about every single thing on the news, that they inflate the currency constantly. They send our money away to wars we're not interested in. Nobody can afford their bills. Nobody can afford health care. And you're going to die alone in some nursing home because you can't afford a nice house because even then they're going to inheritance tax it. They don't want you realizing the truth. And that's why,
Andrew?
Fight the poor people.
You know what, Andrew? I agree about the political class is failing people in Britain, as they have in many other countries. I agree with it completely. We need better politicians who have better solutions to big problems facing our country. But you are big on truth and you abhor lies and you hold them to account because they lie and don't tell the truth.
Correct.
And yet these riots,
Correct,
you claim were just organic reaction to the problems of the country. No, they weren't. These riots happened because far-right thugs acted on false information that the perpetrator of these wicked crimes against these 3 little girls that were killed and many others that were seriously wounded was an illegal Muslim who come into the country, was on an MI6 terror watch list. That is why these riots happened, and that was all a despicable lie designed to make people have completely the wrong idea. And hang on, as a result of those lies, mosques, Muslim mosques belonging to your religion that you've converted to, were then attacked.
Answered to God. They will
as
answer
were
to God.
asylum
They
seeker
will answer to
hotels,
God.
because people believed it was an illegal migrant when it wasn't. It was all lies. And you, as the great espouser of truth who hates lying, should be the first to say that anyone that spread any of those false rumors about him being a Muslim, about him being an illegal immigrant, about him being on the MI6 terror watch list, you should condemn unreservedly anyone who spread any of those false rumors, because they're the things that inspired these riots. Bottom line, end.
Yeah, actually, you know, there's a good point here. There's a good point here, Piers. It's actually a very good point you make. And I actually want to speak to all the non-Muslims who are watching this and understand that if you read your history and you understand how the political class have lied to us to get us into all of these forever wars, they've tried very hard to make you believe that Muslims are your enemy. And there's been a large propaganda campaign by the Western media machine to make sure you feel that way. I assure you that 99.9% of Muslims think just like you, feel just like you, and they're good people. And I don't want anyone to instantly assume that Muslims have committed a violent crime because a violent crime has happened. That's
Do you agree
a
with what I
terrible
just
thing
said?
that happens, and I believe a lot of that happens. Yeah, I agree that, of course, I'd love to live in a world of absolute truth. Then people like you wouldn't have a job and the BBC would be closed down. And then you would have words wouldn't be able to sit up there and say that I'm a human trafficker when he gets caught being a pedophile himself. Sir, my hard drives are clean. I've been searched by 4 federal agencies. I'm doing my absolute best. My hard drives are clean. I'm not a criminal. I'm not the reason why the riot started. I'm a person who was very upset, who has 4-year-old daughters himself, disgusted by what he heard, believes that that is unacceptable in any civilized civilization, and we should do anything it takes to prevent it from happening again. Perhaps I was wrong about the fact he was an illegal migrant. He was only a migrant. Perhaps I was wrong about that detail. However, I was right about most of the things I said.
Wrong.
People's concerns are what led them to the streets, not my video on Twitter. And you telling people.
Did you hear what he said? Perhaps I was wrong about the small fact that he was an illegal migrant, but he was still a migrant. But he was born in the UK. I thought you said that anyone who is born in the UK is a Brit and is not a migrant. But now you're going back when you're challenged on correcting yourself based on the previous conclusion, which you yourself said. You don't want to admit that. You just want to say, oh, I was wrong that he was illegal, but he's still a migrant. He wasn't a migrant. He was born in the UK. You moron, which you already admitted.
People that they shouldn't be allowed to have an opinion online unless it's 100% factual is extremely dangerous, because they're going to come along, decide what the facts are. They're going to lie like they did with the COVID vaccine. They're going to decide the facts. They're going to shut everyone up who disagrees. There's going to be no dissidents. We're going to live in the absolute matrix. There's going to be slave minds everywhere who's not allowed to talk. And we're already getting there in the West as it is. So you need to be very truthfully.
Here's the idea I push. I allow everybody onto uncensored.
Anyway, it's just more nonsense there going forward. That's pretty much the end of the so-called interview or debate or discussion, whatever you want to have it. But do you see how he contradicted himself, guys? First, he called him an illegal migrant. Then he was willing to admit that he was wrong about him being illegal. Then earlier, when Piers was pressing him about the definition of a migrant or who's British and who's not, he admitted anyone who's born in the UK is not a migrant and is a Brit. But then when he was being pressed on the conclusion of that, well, that means that you were also wrong about the fact he was a migrant. He doubled down on saying, no, he wasn't an illegal migrant, but he was a migrant. Why? So he can still push the far right narrative of condemning migrants and saying that they don't want migrants there in general. You're a complete disgrace to Islam and Muslims, Andrew. You had a brilliant opportunity, a golden ticket chance to backtrack, to apologize to the Muslim community in the UK, to admit that you were wrong, to retract your falsehood that you spread that resulted in people being harmed and destruction and chaos erupting in the UK. And I'm not blaming it 100% on you, but you have to take a portion of the blame. And you had the opportunity to do so. You completely waffled. Your ego got the best of you. And if people watch my other commentary on videos related to Andrew Tate and his so-called conversion to Islam, and the fact that he admitted that at the very beginning, after he supposedly converted to Islam, that while he's in Dubai, he acts like a Muslim and he's a Muslim. While he's in Romania, he acts like a Christian and he's a Christian. And I'm sure while he's in the UK, he channels his inner, let's say, far right nationalism and he acts that way. And when he's around his buddy Tommy Robinson, he does the same thing. So with that being said, guys, we can see very clearly who Andrew Tate is. He had a chance to come back and side with Islam and the Muslims. He completely failed. And many people, we have to blame many people who propped up Andrew Tate way too early on in his so-called conversion to Islam, when there were many red flags very early on, continue to be so. We don't see any growth in him whatsoever after 2 years. He's still worshiping Jesus, calling him Lord, and participating in kufri and shirki ritual practices at church on Easter Sunday. And we have to blame many Muslims for not condemning him and propping him up in the Dawah scene way too early on and leading to this chaos. Hopefully, and I know that I was not one of those people, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, but there were many, and we know who they are, and they have to actually they should make public statements about this and say that they were wrong for doing this, and admit that they were wrong, and say they did this too soon. And this should be a lesson to all of us to not prop up these people, because Islam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are in need of nobody, and they do not need Andrew Tate. Islam doesn't need Andrew Tate and his celebrity status. Why? Because he can influence these people. And no, Islam doesn't need you. You're not above Islamic law. You're not above being held to the standard of Islam, which you claim to uphold, and you felt that was attracting you to Islam. No, you're not above that. We will hold you to it. You better believe it, sir. You better believe it. And if you have any question about it, or you did before, you better not now, because many Muslims are correcting you, and we're not going to stand for this. Not in the Muslim community in the UK or anywhere else around the world. So with that being said, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video and this breakdown of this debacle of a debate from Andrew Tate. He was completely embarrassed by Piers Morgan. Doesn't make me happy to say that, but the facts are the facts. And, all in all, we still give Andrew a chance to come back to guidance of Islam, to come back to supporting Islam and Muslims. But unless and until he does that, we can't support him publicly whatsoever. He needs to be condemned. He needs to be not supported. And the only time that we should be seen with him publicly is if we are debating him on these points and correcting him and calling him back to the true guidance and the truth of Islam. With that being said, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. I will be doing more live streams on this channel in the future, very near future, inshallah. So be on the lookout for that. Like this video, comment on it. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think about Andrew Tate, his performance on Piers Morgan, his kufri actions and other videos and statements he's been making. What do you think? Do you think he's a Muslim? Do you think he's ignorant? Do you think he's a plant? Do you think he's part of the matrix? What are your general thoughts on Andrew Tate? Let us know that in the comments. And again, guys, share this on your social media platforms, no matter how big or how small your reach is. It really does help. The channel is new, but it's slowly growing, and we need your support. So please consider helping us with that. With that being said, guys, until next time, inshallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.